This Land Rover hasn't been washed in well over a year, and I've got one day to try and sort the paint out. I can't tell you the last time this interior was cleaned. Overall it's not too bad, a little bit of dust here and there apart from the seats, which I think lost a fight with a raccoon. But this interior does have a couple of little trick upgrades. Over here, my favourite is the bomber style interior lights. And then for your passenger, you've got your little map light so you can see where you're going. And then the biggest secret about this truck is it's got a V8. Now underneath this disgusting exterior is an absolute gem. Underneath we've got a Rover V8 producing 250 horsepower. Now the maddest thing about this car is you can do 100 in it. That'd be like being in an allotment shed being hurled down a ski jump. Now mechanically this car is perfect, but he hasn't really cleaned it. So you can see we've got loads of lichen build up. It's almost a part of vegetation at this point. So it's my job today is to try and clean this thing up the best I can, because after all he deserves it. Now this has got single stage black cellulose paint, so we're gonna have a little few surprises when we take it indoors, but I reckon we can bring this super faded exterior back to a shining example. Now my dad doesn't know it yet, but I've secretly stolen the Land Rover for the day to try and clean it up and revive this paint. But first we can just start with the decontamination wash. So up here we've got a Kranzel on our reel. The best thing about this is I can just flick these taps on and I've got water coming straight out of the pressure washer. Anyway, it's going to rain soon, let's crack on. So as always we're going to start with the wheels and tyres. Also we're going to give a little bit of a spruce up to this chassis here. Now these are 60-year-old wheels, so I'm not expecting to come up perfect, but I think they could be a little bit better than they are right now. So we've got a 25-degree nozzle on our Cobra shotgun here. We're going to give that a rinse. Now you may say washing my car is purely for appearances purposes, but you know what you don't see is what kills you. I mean, look at that. So let's get the short trigger in there and flush some of that out. Right, now we've done our little rinse down, we're going to get in there with our Siege wheel and tyre cleaner, spray that straight onto the tyre, and you'll see this work almost immediately at pulling that browning out from the tyre. Then we're going to chuck some on the wheel face too, and you can see already, see that browning being pulled out? And then we're going to get in there with our Rotor wheel shampoo in the foam Zuka. Just spray it over. The nice thing about this Rotor wheel shampoo is it's got anti-corrosion in it. So I also put it all over the chassis too, especially this time of year. Now to supercharge your cleaning, grab your wheel brush and then just give it a little hit of Siege wheel and tyre cleaner, and then you can get in there and scrub the chemical into the areas that need it. Make sure you work around the lug nuts and this mad looking hub here. It's like something off a Roman chariot. You want to get your leg near that if it was spinning. Let's supercharge that brush and give it a scrub. Right, now all you got to do, get back in there with our 25-degree nozzle, give it a spray down. So now we've finished with cleaning the wheels, we can move on to the pre-wash stage, and I think this car's going to need quite a bit of pre-wash. So we've got Zest, which is our citrus pre-wash here. This one's a little bit different because rather than being a thinner consistency, it's slightly thicker. This has allowed us to use slightly less harsh chemicals by allowing it to dwell for a little bit longer on the car. So we're just going to add a fairly decent glug, because this car is pretty bad, to our pump sprayer, fill the rest with water, and then we're going to go spray out in the car. Now a top tip for when you want to fill up things like these pump sprayers and your foam cannon bottles is, rather than using a tap which is going to get it to foam, you know, at the top of it, to take the bottle, dip it into the bucket, and if you fill it up this way, you don't end up with a ton of foam coming out the top. Now when it comes to citrus pre-wash, you do have a couple of options, right? You can either pre-rinse the car to begin with if you've got lots and lots of heavy mud, but that will also dilute the product when you spray it on. So for a car like this, which has mostly got impacted dirt, I'm going to go for going on dry. Now you really want to concentrate around areas like little seams like that where dirt likes to hide, and work your way around the car, starting in the lower areas and working your way up the doors. So while Zest is dwelling on the car, we can move into our snow foam part of the pre-wash. So we've got our foam Zuka here, the quick lock lid. Again, we really want to extend the dwelling time of that Zest while Baltic does a little bit of cleaning up its own. So we're going to give that a good little glug in there, fill the rest with water, and then we'll go foam off the car. So in here we've got our Baltic snow foam. Just going to fill it up from the bucket once again, and then take it out to the car and give it a foaming. So we've got Zest currently dwelling on the car, so I'm going to foam over it with Baltic to extend that dwell time. Now you're probably looking at the snow foam thinking it looks a little bit thin, but I've done it on purpose with this mix. By making it nice and thin like this, you can see it's going to run in to all those filthy little gaps along here. With a thicker foam, it's going to come off more like sheets. So this way we're really sinking in and letting it dwell. Okay, so this has been sitting and dwelling for a little while now, so I think it's time we can get in there and give it a good pressure rinse down. Now this is probably the most important part of one of these disaster details. We really want to get in now and flush out as much dirt as we can before we go in and start touching the car. The reason I like this one with this curve in the end here is because I can flip it over, and thanks to the swivel at the back here, I can pressure wash the underside of the car and spin it as much as I want while it's still pressurized. It's worth noting on an older car like this, you're essentially pressure washing a colander, so you're going to get a little bit of water going into the interior. Don't worry about it, and just try not to pressure wash too sensitive of an area for too long. So normally you would use our contact car shampoo to now go in and start contact washing the car, but because this car is quite, pretty filthy, and I want to be able to add a little bit of anti-corrosion protection, we're going to go with rotor wheel shampoo instead, at a weaker dilution than we would use on the wheels. Right, now I've got a little bit of rotor wheel shampoo left in here, so what I'm going to do is dump it into our wash bucket, just like that, and then this is also a great little trick for cleaning out the stainless steel filter that lives in the top of your foam Zuka head. So get it in there, and then give it a little foam, and then that's now our wash solution for contact washing the car. So the 2-bucket method is a little bit controversial nowadays, but for a car that is as bad as this, I think you definitely need it. The idea behind it is you have 1 bucket full of your clean, shampooy water, and another that you rinse the pad off each time you've washed the panel. So I would do like the back end here, come over here, dunk it into the rinse bucket, and then dunk it in here for some fresh shampoo solution, and then go and hit the car again. We've got our Korean made wash pad here, and I've also included a brush so we can get around on the crevices and clean those out. Now we want to work in nice straight line motions, checking the panel, and then what we'll also feel is if there's quite a bit of contamination, but we're going to come back and we're going to deal with that in a minute. You can see we've got a lot of dirt from that previous panel, so if we go back over, we're going to take this dirty wash pad, rinse it off in our rinse bucket, and it's got a grit guard in here which is going to trap all the dirt underneath it. Rinse it out, and then if you have a look at that pad now, there's no dirt on there. Dunk it back into our shampoo solution and get back on the car. While I'm washing this Land Rover, let's have a look at what makes the Land Rover so special. In 1948, the Land Rover Series 1 was born, an icon of British engineering and adventure. Built for rugged durability, it featured an all-aluminium body, 4-wheel drive, and a simple yet robust design. Originally inspired by wartime Jeeps, the Series 1 quickly became a trusted workhorse on farms, expeditions, and battlefields alike. Its legendary reliability, go-anywhere capability set the foundation for the Land Rover legacy. Today, it remains a symbol of classic off-road excellence. Right, that was absolutely minging. You can just tell by looking at this wash pad how bad it is. And look at that wash water, it's absolutely disgusting. So the next step is, now that I've hit most of the car over with the wash pad, I'm going to grab our little brush here, get some shampoo solution on there, and work around the crevices of the car. You can see up here we've still got a little bit of ingrained dirt, and as you're polishing, what's going to happen is it's going to vibrate this panel, and then all the dirt that lives inside those is going to come down and get into your pad and swell up the paint. So it's up to us to get in there and make sure that we clean out all those cracks and crevices. Now, a lot of these spots are really bad, so the shampoo alone won't do it. So if we just hit the end of our brush with a little bit of Zest from earlier, and we can get in there and pull out as much dirt as we can. I mean, look at that. So why did we use the 2-bucket method? Well, if you come in and I'll show you. So on the left here, we've got our wash solution. And if you have a look in that bucket, you can see that it's still pretty clean and it's still got some shampoo in it. Whereas the rinse bucket is absolutely filthy. So if we tip it out down here, you can have a look at how dirty that water is. So that's all the dirt coming off the car, and then it traps it underneath that grit guard at the bottom of the bucket. And you can see all the dirt that's left over. That's why we use the 2-bucket method for cars that are as bad as that one. Right, now that we've managed to somewhat clean this paint, we're going to rinse it off now, and then we'll move on to the decontamination step. Right, now we're going to move on to our final decon step here. So we've got our contact car shampoo. You don't need a clay lead, you can just use our car shampoo instead. We're going to put a little tickle in the bottle there. Fill the rest up with water, and then we're going to snow foam the whole car over with a nice thick blanket of snow foam or car shampoo. And then we've got our decon block. So what this is rather than a clay block that you have to knead, especially on a cold day like today, it's just a real pain. So instead we've come out with our little decon block here. It's got nice super thick foam, so it will soak up a lot of that solution, and then we're going to break it in on the glass, and we're going to go around and remove the contamination of the paint. So here we've got our little decon block. And now it's important when these are new that you break it in on the glass just to take the top edge of the polymer off. Once you've broken it in on there, if you come in close here, you can feel the contamination in this paint. It's kind of like, it feels like kind of almost like a pimple on your skin underneath the paint. So what we're going to do is go in here, very lightly, you can hear it. And what I'm doing is I'm just shaving off that top layer, and now it's buttery smooth. Doesn't have to take a long time, just work your way around the car, 10 or 15 minutes, and we'll just get the worst of the contamination out. Thing is, you don't have to do this step. If you take it straight in for polishing, all that contamination is going to get clogged up into your polishing pads, and you're going to be blowing out the pad a lot more often. So 10 minutes saved here is a couple hours in there. Right, so we've spent the whole morning now cleaning, decontaminating, and getting this thing ready for polishing. So now it's time, with the weather just about to turn, the final rinse off, and then we're going to pull it inside and start polishing. Now the nicest thing about having a wall mounted setup is normally this is the worst part of detailing, right? You've cleaned the car, all your equipment's covered in crap, and it's just annoying to deal with. But the nice thing with a wall mounted hose reel like this is if you grab yourself a little junk microfiber, you can reel in that hose and clean it as you bring it in. And sometimes there's a little bit of a tendency to get a little bit of dripping at the end of your hose. Little cast up hose plug in the end. Shove that in the end. No more drips. Right, now we've got it in. Let's get this thing dried off and start polishing. So we've got our micro twist Korean drying towel here. This is great because rather than having the longer loops, which are just going to get caught on all little items like this and start pulling apart your drying towel, these closer knit nap is much better for drying older cars like this. So we're just going to chuck it on, and then we're going to get a real idea of just how bad this paint is. Now that I've dried most of the paint, there's still going to be areas of trapped water, like in these rain rails up here around the door frames. And as you're vibrating and polishing the panels, that water and dirt can fall onto the pad and you'll just be swirling it into it. So grab yourself an airline, just go around. Right, now we can finally start to get to polishing, right? So the polish we're going to use the Lake Country Orange. These pads are brilliant. Now we've got a couple of options for pads here. So I've got a one-step microfiber. Now this is quite aggressive, and it's more for something with clear coat. So I want to try the foam first, because at the end of the day, we're not looking for a full restoration here. We're looking for some preservation. And this being a single stage paint, we need to be quite delicate with that. I have no idea what the paint thickness is going to be like across the car. So that's why we're going to do a test panel. So grab your polishing pad, and then here we've got a little tester product from us. This is going to be our one-step compound. We might need a little bit more than we normally would because there's quite a bit of oxidization on this paint, which means we're going to be pulling up quite a lot of junk from it. So what I like to do is just add a little bit like that, get your pad brush, and then what we're going to do is going to try and wet most of the fibers of this foam. So we're going to get it into the cells of the foam, like a little bit more than that, just around the pad like that, and then just work it in with the back of this. You can use your hand if you haven't got one of these brushes, it doesn't matter. Just spread it in. And then what we're going to do, add one or two more little drops to any dry areas like this, and here. That's all you're going to need, and now that pad is primed. So if we go over to the car, as you can see, we've got some pretty major bush scratching and then just general oxidization here, you see? And now we're gonna try and get this pad on and see what we can do. So let's do a little 50-50. Now, when you do a test patch on cars, in case you end up messing it up, it's always worth doing it on the offside passenger at the rear. So if you do make a mistake, the driver doesn't see it every time they come to the car. So we're just gonna lay a light little tape line here. So when you're polishing, you wanna start on a nice low speed, so 2500 with this Milwaukee machine. I'm just gonna go around and tamp out our working area. We're gonna turn it all the way up to about 4400 on this machine, and then start polishing. Now when I talk about single stage paint, that means there's no clear coat on the paint. So modern cars, anything sort of post 1986 is gonna have clear coat on it. But an older car like this, no clear coat, which means you're polishing the color essentially. So that's why you're seeing black on this pad here. Now I've done a very light pass here because the last thing I want to do is burn through the paint. I'd rather it be dirty than have no paint. So if we take our cloth, let's have a little look and see what kind of improvement we've made to that paint with just that light pass. I'll start off with the least aggressive, which is the soft foam pad, not the microfiber, and then we can always dial it up. A bit like going for a haircut, you can always take hair away, but you can't add it. So we've got a lot more gloss, we've brought a lot of gloss black, and I mean, there is obviously still some scratches here. We could work to try and pull those out, but I think the key thing here is that we're removing the oxidization from the paint, we've got to blow the pad out quite regularly, and then we'll be able to work our way around the car. So we've done that initial gentle pass with the foam, and now we're going to give it a go and see if it's worth stepping up to a slightly more aggressive polish. Now, it's the real dilemma of the detail, this is, whether or not you push something and try and get it to the nth degree, try and get the best polish out of it, but by doing that, you are taking away from the paint. Now, I know my dad, and he's probably going to drive this into a hedge as soon as I'm finished here, so are we really going to push for that? I don't know, but let's see if we can pull a little bit more out of this paint. Let's see what we think of that slightly stronger pad. Same compound, because it's this little new compound I've been working on is kind of one-step polish and compound. So it's a diminishing abrasive. It starts off quite aggressive, and then those particles within the polish, if you think of it like pebbles, they break down more and more and become a finer and finer sandpaper, thus polishing the paint. So the longer you work it, the higher the finish you're going to get out of it. Now let's take a look at that. So this is where we've done a two-step, and if we come over, you can see what a marked improvement that we've made. And that's because of this oxidized paint. We've ripped out the oxidation, and no, we haven't taken out all the scratches, but sometimes that's what you got to do. I mean, we'll give this another pass with the foam pad, but I reckon a mixture of foam pad for most of the car, followed by this microfiber pad for more bad areas, and we should be in pretty good standing. So after each pass, especially in a car like this, we're pulling up a lot of not just bad scratches and swirling, but also a lot of dirt too, because that dirt, because there's no clear coat, it's quite porous, the paint, almost like skin, so it's sucking in a lot of the dirt. So what we need to do is clean the pad quite regularly. So just get your airline, give a little blast like that, and then that picks up the fibers of the pad again, and then we can reapply some polish and keep polishing. So what machine am I using? This is the Milwaukee dual action. So dual action means if you look at the back of the pad here, it's actually, as it's going in a circle, rather than just spinning in one place, it's oscillating, so it's moving around. So if you use something like a rotary, which is still great machines and they definitely have their place with paint correction, something like a body shop would use that because you can remove a lot of paint very quickly, because what you're doing, almost like a drill, you're spinning in one spot and you're concentrating quite a lot of heat in one area. So the danger is the rotary, if you pull it over to the edge on something like this, and then you really bear down, you can burn through that paint very quickly, especially around hard edges. Whereas a dual action, the way these work is they actually stop oscillating when they hit something too hard. So if I put a mark on this pad here, so you'll see, if I hold this nice and flat, you'll see that spinning. Yeah, see that line is moving around. But if we go to the edge of the paint here, spin it and then stop, you'll see that line slow down. And what that's doing is stopping me from bearing down too much, and there's gears within here that are stopping this from spinning, so we're not going to take too much paint off. So that's why I prefer a dual action over a rotary, because that will just keep spinning and burrowing into the paint. You might notice, especially on older cars like this, you see this little bit of crazing here, the cracking. What that is the paint on the bonnet heat cycling after years and years of the engine getting hot and cold, shrinking and contracting. And what it is, you've got the different layers of the paint and they're moving around on top of the steel and eventually they crack. It's just part of the process with older cars like this. And again, yes, you could repaint it, but then you're kind of taking away a part of the car's story. So little bits like that, I don't mind. Right, a few hours have passed now and we've got this thing looking pretty damn good. There's obviously a few little areas where I haven't been able to get into, but we're just so pressed for time that we're now going to move on to ceramic coating this absolute beast. Now the reason we're going for a ceramic coating rather than something like a wax is because we want to be able to seal in and add a sort of clear coat to this car. So we're going to use a new test that we've joined Ricochet Pro, which will be our upcoming ceramic coating. We're going to test it on a nice utilitarian vehicle like this, be a really good test bed for it. So let's get coating. So we've got our new V3 applicators here. The great thing about these applicators, then rather than a normal microfiber, there's a little waterproof layer in here. So when I put the coating on, it won't soak through into the sponge and it'll save quite a bit of coating when you do it that way. So this is Ricochet Pro, and we're going to use this to seal in and lock in this gloss that we've made today. Now you need to prime the pad to begin with when it's the first time you use it. So a few little drops like this. And it's just like a wax really. But the difference is I actually find it to be less effort. So keep the cap on the ceramic coat when you're not using it to stop the air from getting on top of it and curing it. And then what I do is I call a wet line. So I'll put a wet liner coating on the panel and then working in straight line motions all the way to the edge, we're gonna go across and move the coating around. It's similar to how a wax haze is. This coating is gonna rainbow, and when it's rainbowed, it's ready to come off. So you can see it's just starting to flash now, and now is a good time to come in and start taking it off. Now it's worth noting, when you come to buff this off, it's not like a wax. You don't need to press really hard. I'm literally just leveling the coating out. I'm not trying to remove the coating. Now high spots are a real pain, because if you have one and you don't catch it early enough, then you are gonna have to polish that area. However, if you leave it for maybe a couple hours and then you notice one, you can just reapply a little piece of coating on top of where that high spot is, come back and it'll buff away. And what this coating is gonna do is add an insane amount of water beading and also, most importantly, UV protection, so we don't end up with that oxidized paint again. So as cheap insurance, it's always worth, after you've been through and you've buffed back or leveled out the coating, grab yourself a nice soft plush cloth like this one and just go back and chase yourself. So the paint is now looking absolutely awesome, and while we let that coating cure, we've got to tackle our wheels and tyres. So we now got to dress the tyres, so it's kind of adding a nice bit of darkness which really frames the rest of the paint. So we've got a tyre finisher here, just going to mist on a little bit of our Ink P2 tyre dressing, and then we're just going to work from the inside out, and just bring some blackness back to these tyres. Now it's really important that we clean the tyres before, so that this tyre dressing really has a really good chance of adhering and sticking to the tyre. The nice thing about this little tyre finisher are these twisted loops, which really help to get into the nooks and grooves of the tyre. Right, so we've got the exterior looking amazing, the wheels look great, and now it's time to sort out this interior. Now unfortunately there's no cleaner on earth that can fix these seats, but what we can do is at least vacuum it out, clear out some of this wire and crap, and make it look a little bit more presentable. So I've pulled out the rubber mats and now it's time to clean up some of these older vinyl plastics. that's where we can use canopy interior cleaner. So just give it a couple little squirts all over these areas. We can give it a couple of seconds, and then we can come in with our little pyramid scrubber. We'll just give that a little dose, and we can get in and start scrubbing up this vinyl. Nice thing about this canopy interior cleaner is you can use it on just about any surface on the interior. So your plastics, vinyl, leather, carpet, upholstery, Alcantara, any of it really, you can use canopy. Now what's really cool about the interior on this Land Rover is these aren't Land Rover original dials. This is out of a Sabre Jet, and this is out of a MIG, which is really cool. And then all the other panels, all the other gauges are from a Jag as well. And I like the flip switches. It really does make you feel like you're an old B-52 bomber in here. So time for the glass. We've got our shark skin cloths here. And what I like to do is a wet cloth, dry cloth. So this is a little tester of a new glass cleaner I'm trying out. So you've got one wet towel, one dry towel. Get in, mist the glass. You can be pretty generous with it. And then with your wet towel, you're going to come in, and this is really the mow down towel. So we're going to get in, get rid of the worst of the dirt. Make sure you concentrate on the corners like that. And then grab your dry towel, and then you can come in and just buff away where you were previously. Now you might need a couple of towels, which is why we sell these in 5-packs. Right, the car looks absolutely nuts. I've just texted my dad telling him to come over to the unit because I've got a little surprise for him. So let's see what he thinks. Right, I think he's here. Right, remember I said I was going to borrow your car today?
Yes.
There might have been a slight change of plans.
Fucking hell. Have you repainted it?
It does look a bit like we've repainted it, doesn't it?
That's pretty cool. Oh, we're going to get it all muddy again, aren't we?
Yeah, well, please don't for a bit. But so the whole thing's been polished. Do you remember how oxidized and horrible it all looked? Yeah. So we've had a full-on polish. We've dressed the tyres. Interior's even been cleaned. Glass cleaned.
I've never seen it that shiny.
No, you haven't actually. That's true.
Do you know what? That looks awesome.
Yeah? Probably didn't look this good when you picked it up originally, I'd imagine.
That is absolutely fantastic.
Now, you've gained at least 2 or 3 miles per hour at the top end now, because it's so slick,
so
obviously.
Do 103 miles an hour.
Oh yeah, should do 103, yeah. Break the sound barrier in it. You pleased with it? So yeah, we have a look inside, look. So interior's all been vacuumed out. It's all super clean in there now.
It doesn't smell damp and muddy.
No, it doesn't smell. I know you were worried that I might remove the patina if I was ever to do a clean, but has it passed your test? Are you happy with it just being polished up?
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it?
Good, I'm glad you're pleased with it. Now, I will say, bless you.